I hate this book. I don't even usually talk about books I dislike on here. And it's very rare that I just genuinely just hate something to the core because I think hate can be anti-productive at sometimes. Sometimes I think it's productive. And let's talk about this book that I feel duped into buying and very angry that I supported. So buckle up and let's talk about the purportedly cyberpunk graphic novel by Corby Rand and Jeff called No Future. I backed No Future on Kickstarter. It was described as a meeting of Fifth Element and Brazil and Blade Runner, and art that was very Jean-Claude Mobius looking, and I was very excited for this book. I was so enraptured by the art, which was presented with no dialogue in the Kickstarter, which I think is important to note. And I immediately signed up for it. It came really quick. It's by Magnetic Press. It's really beautifully done. It's got these interesting curved edges. I started reading it finally today. I was very excited to read it. And I could not believe what I was reading. I could not believe what I was reading through this entire book because I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because the entire time I kept expecting there to be a twist. It's like going to be released next year in March, again with a description that talks about far right and far left going to these extremes and that being the satire. Like that's what I was expecting. This is kind of that. I mean, that is sort of there, but really the core ideology as represented by the two white people who are the last white people on earth, because let's see how they put it, the feminist fascist had outlawed white people having kids, as well as burgers, because everyone has to be vegan. White people aren't allowed to procreate, they aren't allowed to marry. uh, there was one reviewer on Goodreads who seemed to think that this was a satire of anti-woke people, so that somehow this was supposed. I don't know how you read this. I went back sadly multiple times, like certain phrases, certain pages, like opening up my full media literacy toolkit and trying to see it here. Like, is this just so poorly written? Which it could, because it is not very well written. Now, this is an English translation of French, the original French, so maybe something was lost in translation. Maybe there's just some kind of disconnect here. But let me tell you, if this was supposed to be a satire of anti wokeness, it circled right back around to just being what it was supposed to be satiring. But I don't even know if that's actually the case. Like, this just feels like a grumpy, out of touch, old white straight person grousing at the world. And let me just tell you, it makes me annoyed because I really do love cyberpunk, aesthetically for sure, but also the philosophy of cyberpunk. This is not cyberpunk. This is to me, this is not punk, like punching down. And to me, this book just is reinforcing the power structures that exist. It is the opposite of cyberpunk. It's I don't know. Even if the intentions here were different, the results are so gross, despite this being a beautifully rendered book for the most part. Except, I do feel like there are at least a couple characters who are really borderline feeling like racial caricatures. And maybe it's just because of everything that's surrounding it that it's starting to feel like that. But I was deeply uncomfortable reading this book. I kept hoping it was going to take a turn. I did not like this book. I believe in free speech. I think if someone wants to publish this, you can do it, but I think you need to make it clear to your buyers, especially someone who got it through a Kickstarter and has no ability to refund this, because they dislike the content. I think you have to make it clear what kind of book it is. The one thing I will say is they did provide a preview of the prologue. If I had read that, maybe it would have made a difference. I don't know. I think I probably would have read it and blithely, stupidly expected there to be a twist and this not to be all there is. But I don't like to read prologues or previews. I like to wait until I get the full thing and experience it. This has given me pause to make sure I do my research. I don't know if it would have helped in this case. I haven't bothered to do the research. I already have the book. I can't return it. I don't like it. But in the future, I'm going to be doing it. I will be reading the previews, and then I'll be making my decision if it's not somebody I already know. So if this sounds like the kind of thing you might enjoy, ooh, you're probably on the wrong page. But it does exist.